Bez Hashem, today we're going to start Samach Daled and Omer Aleph on the bottom, the Mishnah. The Mishnah, we started last week, we'll start it and finish up the Sugya of the Molech today. So let's start. Hanoitim is our Molech, Mishnah says, you give from your child to the Molech, Einu Chayev, he's not Chayev Skilum, Achim Sir Molech, until he hands it over to the Molech. We'll see what that means in the Gemara. Vayavir Be'esh, and it passes him through the fire. He has to do both these actions. He has to be moist, sheyimsor l'moilech, vayavir ba'esh, giving it to the molech and passing it through the fire. Masa l'moilech v'ayavir but if he gave it to the molech, but he didn't pass it through the fire, v'hever ba'esh l'masa l'moilech, or he passed it through the fire and didn't give it to the molech, einu chayiv, he's not chayiv skilo, ad sheyimsor l'moilech v'ayavir ba'esh, until he does both. The Aruch LaNer says he does both, and he does it in that order. He does it in the order by giving it to the molech and then passing it through the fire. Let's start the Gemara, and then we'll go into a Machlokas Rashi and the Rambam, and we'll see the Halacha L'maisa. Okay. The Gemara makes an inference here and says, hold on a second. And the last couple of Mishnayot that we were learning about Avodah Zarah. The molech, seemingly, is Avodah Zarah, right? Teaching me both. Is it two separate things? So Rabbi Avin says, Tanan Command Omar. This Mishnah is like the opinion. Molech lab avodah zara. Molech is not an avodah zara. It's not an avodah zara. Okay, so we have to understand, if it's not an avodah zara, then what is it? So some want to say, it's like the Meiri, they want to say that it's a chukei goyim. It's something that the goyim would do as for a lucky charm. Rechilusha Ram says that this was a form of magic practiced by the Canaanim in note 49. And it's punishable by stoning, as the Torah says. This was molech, but it's not avodah zarah per se. It's not actually avodah zarah. It's something else. The Tanya, it was taught in the Braita, that if you did a service of the molech to any other avodah zarah, you'd be hayav, right? Because if it's an avodah zarah service and you did it to another avodah zarah, you're still hayav. But if it's not considered the same, if you did the service of passing the child through the fire for the molech, then yeah, you're chayav skila. If you do it for an avodah zarah, not for the molech, then you're potter. So like the way Rashi explains it here is that if it's an avodah zarah, if molech is an avodah zarah, so if you did the service of molech to another avodah zarah, you're going to be chayav skila. But if the molech is not avodah zarah, so then if you do them a service of the molech to any other avodah zarah, it's not chayav skila. And more so, if you shech the carbon or anything to the molech, you're not chayav because it's not an avodah zarah. So it's a machloket, the Tanakama here, and Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. The halacha is like Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon because it's brought down in the Stam Mishnah. So the halacha is like that the molech is not necessarily avodah zarah. Avodah zarah is separate, and molech, whether it be chukei goyim, and the goyim would do, or it's a form of magic, whatever it is not considered strict avodah zarah. Amar Abaye says, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. This statement of Rabbi Shimon that molech is not avodah zarah. Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos Amru davar echad. They both say the same thing, that molech is not avodah zarah. Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon hadamran. Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, this is what we just said. Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos. Where we see Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos? The Tanya, because he taught in Ebraita. Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos Omer mipnei ma tafsa Torah lashon molech. Why does it say molech? Why does the Torah call it a molech? What's a molech? Molech comes from the lashon of melech, of a ruler. Kol shem lichu alehem. Anything that they put as a ruler atop them. So they say this molech has some sort of consider some sort of a ruler, not an avodah zarah, not a deity, not a godly being, or rather just someone with power. Kol shem lichu alehem. Afilu tziror v'afilu kisim. Even if they take a pebble or a twig and they say, "Oh, this pebble or this twig is the molech," and then the person brings his son, goes over to the molech, and they carry it over the fire and all that, then he would be hayav skila, even for a pebble or a twig that they now considered a molech. Rava says no. There is a difference between Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon and Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos. What was the difference? Molech harai ika benayu. This case about the pebble and the twig. It's a molech harai, meaning no one in their right mind thinks that a pebble or a twig is in control, that is the ruler. But temporarily they're saying it is. So Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon would say no. If you took someone took a pebble and said this is the molech, and then they brought the child and passed it over the fire, you're not going to be hayav skila because that pebble is a temporary molech. Only if it's a molech that everybody says it's a molech, and everybody says this is what you do, this is the place. Then and only then, according to Rabbi Shimon, would be hayav skila for that molech. Okay. So that's one nafkamina. That's Rabbi Elazar Shimon. That's the halacha l'maaseh that a permanent molech, you are hayav skila. But if you did the molech service to another zara, then you're not hayav skila. Amari bi'anai. Eno hayav. He's not hayav. Ad shimserenu l'mashartei avodah zara. Okay. First of all, remember the Mishnah said he has to be shimsor lamolech. He gives it over to the molech. So the question is, what does it mean giving it over to the molech? So the Gemara says, until he gives it over to the attendants, those who take care of the avodah zarah. Now the Mefarshim ask, you just told me, and the halacha is that it's not considered avodah zarah. So why are you saying the mishartei avodah zarah? To the attendants of the avodah zarah. So it could be just that the lashon is lav dafka. It means it's similar enough to avodah zarah to say attendants of avodah zarah. But others do change the girsa, and they say to the komrim, which means the priests of the molech, and not necessarily the priests of avodah zarah. Anyway, you have to give it over. It means he has to come to the molech and he has to give it over to the attendants of the molech. Shenemar, because it says in pasuk, umizaracha lo titen lahavir lamolech. From your children, don't give it to the molech. Meaning, in order to be hayav, you have to have given it. Because it says don't give it, right? So you have to have given it to your hayav skila. Tanena mihachi. We also have a brayta that taught this way. Yachol he'ever velo masar hayav. You might have thought that if you took the kid over the fire, but he didn't give it over to the priest, hayav, you'll be hayav skila. Tamiloma. So it says lo titen, don't give. Means you have to have given in order to be hayav. Skila, masar la molech v'lo hever. If you give it over to the molech, but you didn't take him over the fire, give him over to the priests, but then you don't take him over the fire. Lo masar yeh hayav. So you would think he'd be hayav. So Talmud yachol yeh hayav. Talmud lomar lahavir. You have to pass him over the fire. You have to have done both. Masar vehever shalom molech. You might think if you gave him over to the priest, and you passed him over the fire, but not for the molech, for a different avodah zarah. Yachol yechaya. You might think he's chayav. Skila tamud lomar la molech, only for the molech, and not for other avodah zarah. Masar vehavir la molech v'lo be'esh. You might think if I gave it over to the priest, and they passed it over, but they didn't pass it over fire. They ran out of fire. They didn't want to use fire. They went using water or something else. And he didn't pass him with cannot be. Because here it says lahavir in Pasuk and Torah Shalom, Pasuk Aleph that it brings down. It says over there lahavir. And then in Yikra in Devarim it says lo yimatzeh b'cham ma'avir beno uvito ba'esh. So it says ma'avir, and then it says ha'avir. Mala halam ba'esh, just like this last pasuk that says, "Don't bring your son through the fire." Afkam ba'esh. So to here has to be ba'esh. Umakam molech aflahalam molech. So to there is the molech. This one also talking about molech. So in order to be hayav skila for bringing a child up to the molech so far, what we've seen is that it has to have been given over to the priests, and it has to have been passed over the fire, and it has to have been for the molech. That's the three criteria so far that we need to have in order to be hayav skila for bringing the kid to the molech. Now, there's a difference in understanding of the Rashi and the Rambam when it comes to giving the kid over to the priest of the molech. The way Rashi understands this, Rashi understands you give the kid over to the priests, and the priest takes the kid and passes him over the fire. The Rambam doesn't understand this way, and one of his ideas could be is that the priest is bringing the child over the fire, and the father's going to get stoned for that. So the Rambam has the idea. This way, he brings down the halacha. The Rambam says that the kid is given over to the priests. I guess they do some sort of checklist. They check him, evaluate him, and then the kid is given back to the father, and the father brings the kid over the fire, and now the father could be hayav skila. The father has to be the one who lahavir, who crosses his son over the fire. That's the way the Rambam learns the sugya, and that's the halakha that's brought down by the Rambam. Okay, now let's move on to the next piece of Gemara. Amar Ravacha Bered Rava. Ravacha said the name of Rava. The son of Rava said, Amar Ravacha Bered Rava. If you bring all of the children to the molech, you're patur. You're not hayav skila. Person who kills all his kids for the molech, he's patur shneimar. It says mizar acha, from your offspring, v'lo kol zaracha, and not all your offspring. So, okay, we have a couple issues here. Let's deal with two of them. Okay, first one. If the guy kills, let's say he has 10 kids, and he brings 9 of them to molech, he's chayav skila. He brings the 10th one, and he's no longer hayav skila. What's going on? It should be even worse. So those are want to explain that the kapara that comes to skila would not work if a person killed all his kids. That would be a terrible thing. So that's one way to understand that. Okay, so he's it wouldn't be enough of a kapara. The other problem we have here is Tosfot on the top. Tosfot says, 1 second. He kills his first kid. He gives it to the molech. He's chayav skila. Kids is came still chayav skila. I guess it says 10th. No more chayav skila. So what happened? If he's chayav skila, right? The chiyuv of skila should always stay. You cannot now say, oh, now it goes away. If it's chayav skila, he's chayav skila. He cannot take it away after he kills all his kids. So Tosfot gives 2 answers. When this can be that you're potter if you gave all your kids. What case is this in? The Tosafot says there's 2 cases. Case number 1, Tosafot says you have ben echad, you have only one son. You have only one son, and only one child, and you give that one child over to the molech, right? So you are never hayav skila because that was all your children, and it says mizaracha. You have to leave some over, and you don't have any over, so therefore you cannot be hayav. So you patur from skila. The second answer he gives is that you brought up all your children at the same time. You bring them all at the same time. You bring them all at the same time. Bring them all at the same time. Then there was never. It was never chal. It never happened that he was chayav skila because he didn't kill one and then became chayav skila. He killed all 10 in one shot. So he's never chal a chiyav of skila. Okay, and that's the halakha. The halakha is that if you killed all your descendants for the molech, then you're patur. And if there's some left over, then you're chayav skila. Ba'er Ravashi. Ravashi asked the question: Eviro suma mahu. Yashin Mahu. Two questions. The way the Mepharshim understand these two questions, we're saying that the kid has to pass over the fire. The way they're understanding, and the Rambam definitely understands this way, it means the kid has to be able to pass over the fire himself. He has to be able to walk it himself. All right, Rambam is very clear. He has to go b'raglav. He has to go on his feet over the fire. Now, what about when he's sleeping? Or what about if he's blind? He cannot walk it himself. Can't walk it himself, right? He can't see where he's going. And if he's sleeping, you got to carry him. So since he can't do it himself, is it still considered that he was passed over the fire and he's chayav, or it's not considered that he's passed over the fire and he's not chayav? So what? That's the question. The Gemara does not answer this question. The Gemara leaves it safek, doesn't answer it. So the Rambam and his derech is that if the Gemara asks a question and left it as a safek, and if it's safek nifashot, kill somebody, don't kill somebody, so then we'll be mekel and we don't kill them. So if a guy brought his blind son to the molech or his sleeping son to the molech, then he would not be hayas kilah. Okay, the third question, which the Gemara is going to deal with, is ben beno or ben bito mahu. What about a grandson or a grandson from his son or a grandson from his daughter? What about if he took his grandchild? It says, look at them, mizarol amolech. What about a grandchild? So let's see. Tifshot mihada. Let's answer one of these questions. It says, Kimizaro natan lamolech. From your son, from your descendants to the molech. Ma tamid lomar. What is it saying? What is it teaching zaro? Descendants, offspring. The fish ne'emar. Because it was written, there shall not be found among you one who passes his son and daughter through the fire. It says son and daughter. I see only my son and my daughter. Ben beno ben bito menayim. What about my grandkids? So there's another pasuk that says bitito mizaro, when he gives of his offspring for molech. One second, Tana patach ki mizaro. First, you started telling me mizaro. Mizaro means offspring. That mizaro means descendants, right? Vesalik bitito mizaro. And then you bring me another pasuk that says when he gives of his offspring. The Gemara says, really, the first part is to answer the first question. That what mizaro includes the grandchildren. What about this third pasuk bitito mizaro? Daresh achinahi. Another explanation. Zaro and li ela zara kasher. I only know kosher zara, right? Not that he became a mamzer or some other apostle, right? And li ela zara kasher. Zera pasum minayin. How about if it is a zera apostle? The Talmud Leimer vitito mizaro, and he gets from his zar, from his offspring. That means any type of offspring, kosher, not kosher, and that is the halacha that chayiv skila even for bringing a son or daughter to the molech, and they're not kosher yidden. Still, it'd be hayas skila. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, "Enu hayav ad she'avirenu derech ha'avara." In order to be hayas skila, he has to take it on the regular way that they would pass it over the fire. So the Gemara says, what was the way they passed it over the fire? So it's a mahoket, Abaya v'Rava, Amar Abaya. What would they do? They put a column of bricks in the middle, and the person would work on those bricks. And nurame hagisa, v'nurame hagisa, and the fire on this side of the bricks, and the fire on that side of the bricks, and the child has to walk in between the two fires. Bricks are in the middle, and he walks in the two fires in between. That is the way Abaye learns this, what this means, the molech procedure. Now, it's a little interesting, because if you're walking on bricks in between two fires, you wouldn't die. Okay? So maybe the molech service is that you don't die. But Rabbi Yonatan ben Lunuel, he wants to say, interesting chat. He says, according to Abaye, they walk on a brick in the middle, so they would have to walk multiple times between the two fires. So much so at that time, fumes and whatever else would confuse them and tired and make this person tired, and eventually he might fall into the fire and die. You make him walk back and forth a bunch of times. So there's a couple ways to understand this. Rashi seems to say that according to Abai, he didn't actually die when he did the molech. He went through it and that was it. According to the opinion, you make him go back a bunch of times, and sometimes they would die, and sometimes they wouldn't. Okay, that's Abai. But halacha is always like machloket Abai Rava. Halacha is usually like Rava. So let's see Rava's opinion. Rava Amar Kimeshavarta de Puria. It's like the Purim style jump. What is the Purim style jump? So Rashi and the Geonim, they all explain that Purim style jump means because on Purim, the kids used to play a game. And the game had to do with fire. What was the game? The way the Geonim explain it, they would make an effigy, like a doll of Haman. And then they would make a hole in the ground, a pit, a bore, and they would throw Haman inside there. Haman is a puppet type of thing, and then they would light it on fire while it's all in the pit in the ground. And then the boys would play a game of Purim, and they would jump from one side over the other side, jumping over the fire. That was the way they did this Purim game. So if you see kids doing crazy things on Purim, in Bavel, that's what they used to do, jumping over the fire. So Rava says that's what they did. And they have an opinion like Rava. You have to go over the thing in its proper path. And if he passed the child through on foot, he is not liable. Meaning, if he didn't jump, that's the way it is brought in Rashi. And that's the normal way. It has to be leaped. So according to Rashi, a rava is very simple. In order to hayash kila for the molech, you have to do the way it's always done, and the way it's done is jumping over the fire. And if he walks over it, he's not going to be hayat. Now, this is a very big problem with the Rambam. The Rambam's lashon is very clear. The Rambam says the child has to be able to walk, right? And that's why if he's blind, this and that, he can't walk on his own. It's going to be patur. So the child has to be able to walk. So it seems to be walking and not jumping. So this is the question that's asking the Rambam and many. As the Rambam says he has to walk, and here it seems to be he has to leap. And they seem to answer that the Rambam doesn't mean he necessarily has to walk, in a sense, but he has to be able to do it himself, meaning he has to be able to do it. And he has to be able to jump through the fire himself. It has to be done himself. It has to be done from himself. He has to go through the fire, not necessarily jump, necessarily walk, but he has to go through the fire, and that part has to be done. Has to be done by himself. Okay, so that's the Rambam on that. Okay, Rashi is very partial. Rashi says you have to jump, right? We just say no, you don't have to jump, but he has to be able to do it on his own. Again, the Rishonim argue with this molech service. If the child that went through this molech service, did he actually die? Didn't he actually die? Was he still alive? Did he die sometimes and not the other times? The whole service is questionable. Exactly what happened, what didn't happen, and in a way, in a sense, that's a great thing that it's questionable. It means many people didn't do it, and that's why they don't know. Okay, let's see if we can go a little more. Okay. He's only liable for the offspring. Haketzad beno v'ito hayav. For his son and daughter, he's hayav. Aviv v'imo achiv v'achoto patur. But if he did it for his father, mother, sister, brother, and he brought them to the molech, his siblings or his parents, evir atzmo patur. He, wait a second. Back. Patur. Evir atzmo patur. Okay. So, all right. So we have three categories here. Children is hayat. Siblings, parents, patur. What about he himself? If he takes himself and gives himself over to the molech, so here it is a machloket. If he gives himself over to the to the grill or to he gives himself over to the molech, what is the din there? So there's a machloket of Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon. We'll see the reason for the machloket in a minute. If he did a service to the Melech to any of the Zar, you're chayiv. That's the Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon says the Melech chayiv. Only to the Melech you're chayiv. So the Melech potter because the Melech is not an Avodah Zarah. So if you did a service to the Melech to Avodah Zarah, you're not chayiv. Amar Ula, my entire Rabbi Shimon. What's the Rabbi Shimon that says if he brings himself as to the Molech, he is chayav because Amar Kral lo yimetzeh b'cha. There should not be found among you. You b'cha be'atzmecha. You yourself should not be given over to the Molech. For Rabbanan Ladarshe, but the rabbis, why don't they learn B'cha? But Rabbanan Ladarshe B'cha, they don't learn B'cha, but now, but we did. Avedatov, Avedat Aviv. If a person found a lost object belonging to him and belonging to his father, Shilo Kedomet, he takes his first. Vamrin, we said, in my time, what was the reason? Va'aman, Reviuda. And Reviuda said, Amaka efes kilo yebecha evyon. It should not be with you a poor person. Since you have to make yourself not poor, so yours takes first. So you see, becha. Becha means you. You shouldn't let yourself be poor. You should find your object first. But the Gemara says no. You don't learn it from becha. From the word efes, we learned that from. That you learn it from the word efes that a person shouldn't let himself become poor. Not from the word b'cha. So the word b'cha, only Rabbi Shimon learns it. And that's what he says, if you give yourself over to the Molech and Chayav. But Tanakama doesn't. And in this case, we do not paskin like Rabbi Shimon. We paskin like the Tanakama, that a person gives himself over to the Molech, he is potter. That's the way it's brought down in the Rambam. Okay. One last sugi over here before we get up to the Mishnah and call it a day. Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Hanina, Shalosh keritod ba'avodah zarah. Lama. Why does it say 3 times ba'avodah zarah? Person gets karet. So Rashi explains 2 of them is by the molech, and the third one is a pasuk about the migadef in Sefer Devarim. Okay, so why have it 3 times? One to tell us you get karet for serving the Avodah in the proper way to be served. You get karet. The second one, if you took about the zara and you served it, not in its proper way, also karet. And one of them is for the molech. Even though molech is not about the zara, it's similar enough to the zara to say they get karet. Oh, man, darim molech about the zara. But what about if you say molech is about the zara? So then it's kedarka shlagadarka. You don't need a third pasuk. Karet the molech lamali. Why do I need a third pasuk to tell me karet by molech? I already know. It says lama'avir beno shelo kedarka. Is if you took your son and brought it to the molech, but you brought it in a not usual manner. I don't know exactly what you did. Maybe you took him like a kapara chicken. You brought him over the fire. So even then, you'll still get a even then, you still get karet. In the third pasuk that's about Megadev, we always learn Megadev, the person who curses Hashem. There's another opinion that says Megadev is a person who sings ton of Zara. So if Megadev is also about Zara, so why do I need a pasuk by Megadev? Karet Megadev lameli. Why do I need already have about Zara? So the Tanya he karet because it says he karet. What's he karet? He karet b'olam hazeh. You get karet in this world to karet b'olam haba. You get to karet in the next world. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. I'm gonna be small. One second, if I look right now, but the pasuk right before he karet to karet, it says v'nichrata. There's three worlds that a person gets karet in three different words. Ela v'nichrata in the first pasuk b'olam hazeh. B'olam hazeh. He karet leolam haba and tikaret divu Torah v'kilshon b'nei adam. Sometimes the Torah talks in the way of the men, meaning that uses words that don't actually mean anything, saying things extra, saying things double, but it doesn't actually mean that that is the din. So, so we have this idea that serving any type of zar in any certain way does get karet. The person has to be very important. So even though he might not be hayash kila, but karet that takes a person away from olam hazeh and olam haba is a force to be reckoned with. Okay. If you don't have any questions, we'll stop here for today. Yashar koach, shavua tov לכולם.